Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. So, according to the suggestion made last time, I'm going to change the title of this course. I haven't done this, but it will be called Introductory Statistics and Islamic Approach. That way, it will not appear to be any restricted to a Muslim audience, but it describes more accurately what I'm trying to do. So now, the question that will automatically arise in the mind of everybody is, why should it be for Muslim students, or what difference does the Islamic approach make? Why? There are many related questions here. One is that, of course, statistics was invented in the West, and so obviously they should know better how to teach it, and so if they are teaching it, why not just follow them? They are the originators of the subject. And there are related questions that actually there is a secular mindset. It will interest you to know that this secular mindset was not, it has not been there forever. Actually, in the 16th and 17th century, Europe was just as deeply religious as the rest of the world. And when some people said that there are some areas of knowledge which religion has nothing to say about, this was strongly resisted. Many people said, no, this is wrong. This cannot be. Religion is all comprehensive. It governs every aspect of life, and there is nothing which is beyond the scope of religion. So, but it was a battle of ideas for 2 centuries in which eventually the secular point of view prevailed, and they said that there are areas of knowledge which are outside the reach of religion. They are just technical, they have nothing to do with religion. They are objective, they are fact. Now if I say this is a table, this is a table. What does religion have to say about this? So similarly, factual, objective, concrete things are not subject to religion. So this is the whole idea of secularity. The secular thinking means that there are two aspects of our life, 2 aspects of our knowledge. They are completely separated from each other. There is the religion which deals with our inner, personal, spiritual life, and about which I am free to do what I want and you are free, and there is not to be much communication. In fact, one of the basically, you see, the idea of secular thinking arose from certain historical experiences in the West. This is very important to understand. It's not that this is something which was logically and rationally discovered. It was just that in the West there was a huge amount of fighting among different religions. The Catholics really did a lot of massive amount of cruelty and torture to Protestants. And when the Protestants got the chance, they took their revenge. So people got the idea that religion is just about fighting each other. And so they said, well, first of all, we should not talk about religion because it leads to fights. And also that if we want to have a society, you see, initially the idea was that society should be based on religion. But which religion? Catholicism, Protestantism, and in the Protestant there are many different factions, and they all disagree with each other. So they said, no, that means that society cannot be founded on religion. We must found it on some rational, logical principles which are acceptable to everybody, and religion is not. So then the idea came that, okay, there are certain domains of knowledge which are purely outside the reach of religion. And these are the domains which we'll use for our common discussions. Privately we can talk about religion, but in public we cannot talk about religion because it will cause a fight. So all of these are ideas which are deeply implanted in. When you read the books from the West, whether it's a novel or whether it's a textbook, these ideas are there in the background and they are exposed in many different ways. You don't actually, it's like the foundation, it's not actually openly discussed because everybody assumes it's true. But these ideas get through to you. You also absorb this understanding without actually being explicit. So the first job that I am facing here is, why should we have an Islamic approach? So what is the answer to this question that you have understood from the lecture now? Should we have an Islamic approach? What are the characteristics? What are the features which make an Islamic approach to teaching statistics different from a Western approach? Not just statistics, actually all of education is affected by this, but what do you understand from this then? What are the basic differentiating features of an Islamic approach to teaching and learning? Yes. Open for Faryal, you seem to have something.
Okay, so from your lecture and statistics, I'm beginner in statistics. So I understood that they're the same sort of problem of logical positivism behind statistics as a discipline as well. So, whereas
कोई हमारे पास स्पीकर है क्योंकि this is being live streamed, so अगर स्पीकर होता तो ये बात भी हाँ ले आए. Meanwhile, okay, go ahead.
So whereas before, or how statistics has been taught normally is that you're doing certain numbers and stuff, and the analysis on the one hand, that is the job of somebody else, and the other thing is I think the example of the nuclear that you used, sort of somebody making the nuclear technology and not being connected with how it's going to be used. So the whole question of knowledge and what purpose it's going to be used for, that detachment is not possible in Islamic.
Yes, that's definitely one reason that as statisticians we cannot do research and be unconnected with how this research is going to be used. This is something which is called fragmentation of knowledge. I am specialized in one thing and that's my job, and it's not my business to know what the other person is going to do. It doesn't concern me. I am an expert and this is not possible. So this is one difference. What other differences are there?
If we compare the Muslim and the rest of the religions like Christianity and Buddhism and some other religions, they have the similar some aspects of life and some characteristics are similar in there. In Christianity they are also believe in God and they have the same things, and so it doesn't seem like that there is a complete. So they have also the moral values and that sort of things. So why there is a strict differentiation between these only for the Muslims and what is the reason?
I think that this question, there might be a Christian approach to teaching. What I'm talking, the conventional approach is not based on any religion, it's based on secular ideas that this is outside the scope of religion. And actually one very important thing, most fundamental thing, the first point written here is that what is the meaning of knowledge itself? This is under question. This is most fundamental. Now, the secular idea about knowledge is that it is objective, it is factual, it is concrete, it is indisputable. Like, this is a table, everyone who is rational can agree that this is a table and there is no possible dispute. There is no, and on subjective things like, is this good, is this moral, this is subjective this is not concrete, this is not objective. We can disagree and there is no way to decide who is right. So, knowledge is divided into two parts. One is the objective part, on which there can be no disagreements, there can be no arguments. It is just like a number, 2 plus 2 equals 4. Everybody agrees, there is no Islamic or un-Islamic. So, the nature of knowledge, this is what the Western concept of knowledge is, that knowledge is concrete, objective, factual, and automatically agreed to by everybody who's rational. Now, if somebody disagrees with something, that means that they are not rational. And implicit in this is also the message that people who are religious are not rational, because they are illogically rejecting things which are factual. So, this already we are disputing, that knowledge, this is not the nature of knowledge. Knowledge is not like that. Most human knowledge mixes facts and values, and you cannot separate them. This is really the thing which is not well understood, that in the Western tradition they separate. They say that knowledge can be separated cleanly. There are some opinions and there are facts, and the two cannot be mixed. This is not true. Facts and opinions are mixed in such a way that you cannot separate them. So that makes for a different understanding of what knowledge is. So somebody can somebody explain why knowledge may appear to be factual and concrete, but it automatically builds in value judgments, subjective elements. So there is an illusion created that something is factual and objective and concrete, when in fact it is not. It is just an opinion. Does somebody have an example?
Sir, the kind of use it is put into may have results on morals. So,
okay, that's correct. For example, suppose I say that I am building an atom bomb, and this is just a fact. Now, an atom bomb is going to be used to kill people, and you cannot isolate one thing from the other thing and say that this is just a purely technological thing I am doing, and it has no implications. Obviously it has implications. If you are building a bomb, then you are supporting war efforts, and you are saying that it is okay to kill. It's okay not to worry about whether or not. This is already a value judgment.
So plus there are some things that are in every space and time. There are some things that are always right and always wrong. Like you said, killing people. So there are some inbuilt human models.
Very good. I mean, this is actually another point of debate, point of contention between the secular view and the Islamic view. According to the Islamic view, and according to all religions, there are absolute moral values which are invariant across time and space, and every person must follow them. According to the secular view, that's not true. Norms are determined by consensus. If we all agree that homosexuality is wrong, then it is wrong. But 10 years later, if we agree that this is right, then it becomes right. And so there is no absolute moral value. So this is another point of contention between secular and Islamic views. Yes?
So we can say that knowledge should be useful for human beings.
Yes, this is another point of contention. This is a disagreement between Western idea of knowledge and Islamic idea. In Islam, we distinguish between useful knowledge and useless knowledge. In the West, they say all knowledge is the same. Explicitly, the argument is made that if you are learning something, whether it's very complex mathematical models which have no apparent relation to any real world phenomena, they say, well, Today it's not applicable, but tomorrow somebody may find a use for it. So we cannot say in advance. So all knowledge is equally valuable. Actually, this comes from a background. This is not in vacuum that they are saying. It comes from the background that if you look at Bertrand Russell, who was one of the leading atheists of the 20th century and actually a propagator of his belief, he said very clearly that, ultimately all life was created by an accident, a cosmic accident. Some atoms came together and it will be destroyed by an accident. There will be a big supernova and everything will die. So, regardless of what we do, there is no meaning to life, whether we are heroes or whether we are cowards or whether we do great things or whether we don't. Nothing matters. Nobody is watching. So, once you have the idea that life is without purpose, then basically useful means useful with respect to achieving some goal. But if there is no goal, then everything is the same. So all knowledge is equally valuable. So again, this is an important distinction between. So that's why, for all of these reasons, the Islamic point of view is different, and so Islamic approach to teaching and learning will be different. So today we have a strange situation that because of this fragmentation, because of this disregard for, as a Muslim teacher, I must make sure that what I'm teaching you is useful, because I don't want to teach useless knowledge. That will be a sin for me. I'm wasting students' time. That's not good. But no regard for this is given in the Western tradition. So a student can learn beginning macro and then intermediate macro and then advanced macro. Macro is about basically government policies and how the economy should be run. Now you take this student and you put him in the government, say what you should do, he will not have the faintest idea. He has never studied. He has studied mathematical models, but how to apply it, he has never studied. So, this is because of this approach that separates and it doesn't make a distinction between useful and useless. When I started to develop this course, and it has taken me about 10 years, I said for every fact I teach, I must go and find out how this is used in the real world. And I thought that I would find this in the books, but I couldn't. I looked, here is the average and here is the median. Is there a real world application? Now, if you look through the books, there is an illusion. The book gives you some data and applies it. So it seems like you are dealing with real data. But actually it's just an illusion. If you go back and see, are people actually using this? If you go and see, in the Olympics, people are actually evaluating performance. So what do? Well, they use a trimmed mean. They don't use the mean itself. So, there's something, that's a real example. So when you go and look for real examples, not artificial real examples. So in the textbooks you can find artificial real examples, but no real examples. So when in developing this course, I tried to make sure that I teach only those concepts that are actually used in the real world. And I found that a lot of things can be just skipped because they are not used. Actually, the Western methodology of teaching, I give an example like this. It's like if you teach somebody all about the technology required to manufacture a car. There's a huge amount of work. Carburetor and radiator and spark plugs and many systems. But you don't teach the student how to drive. So you can't, when you put him in the car and say, you know everything about how this car was manufactured, go ahead and drive it. He will not have any idea. On the other hand, driving is much easier to learn. And yet, that's what the useful part is. Now, it doesn't mean that production technology is useless. It is useful. Of course, the car wouldn't exist if it wasn't there. But for most people, it is not useful knowledge. There is a small number of people who need to know how to manufacture and how to fix the cars. But for most people, all they need to know is how to learn how to drive. And typical statistical courses don't teach you how to drive. Yes.
Sir, we read that lecture and I was confused at a point. Islam says the difference gives the clear difference between useful knowledge and not so useful knowledge. Sir, there was this question in the quiz as well about
sailing ships.
Yes, sir.
Yes, lots of people got that wrong.
Yes, sir, a little explanation.
Yes, well, basically, you see, there was a time when international trade was run by sailing ships. These were the things which carried out trade. There was nothing else. But then the steam engine came and sailing ships became obsolete. Now they are used for recreation and leisure, but they are not really very important anymore. So the value of that knowledge has changed.
Sir, that's true, but when we say Islam says something that's useful, it means it's useful for mankind, for the welfare of mankind. So when we know the technique of how to make sailing ships, it's always useful, is it not?
Well, you see, what would it be used for?
The transport like labor.
Not these days. It's not used for transport.
Sir, we have all sorts of
What?
Sir, as a acid तो वो useful है ना, always useful होगा.
क्या चीज?
Selling ships जो है, वो as a acid तो वो always useful होगा ना.
No, today the ships are in use, but they are not sailing ships. They are machine engine, steam engine. Sailing ships are used only for recreation, for leisure. So if there aren't any, it wouldn't cause any serious damage to the world. Anyway, the point was not really the point was to illustrate that the utility of these things, like building forts, was very important at one point. It was the very important means of defense, but now it's useless. So the value of types of knowledge, like agriculture also, our current agriculture techniques are based on tractors and fertilizers, and these were not known 1 century ago, so it was, and probably will be obsolete 1 century later. So it's temporarily useful, but not eternally useful. Actually, the background idea is that the only eternally useful knowledge is that in the Quran and the Hadith. Okay, so on this page, basically what I am trying to say is that the secular conception of knowledge is different, its utility is different, and therefore the methodology of how you teach and also what you teach, all of these things are different. And unlike, this is what is not so widely realized, which is leading to a problem, is that because of this secular idea which people absorb, that Western knowledge is purely technical and objective, so there is no conflict with Islam. So we can teach Islam on one side and Western knowledge on the other side, and there is no problem because there is no conflict. This is a problem. This is a serious problem, because actually the secular education embodies many ideas which are strongly in conflict with Islam, and when you learn these two things, they conflict with each other. So one of the ideas which is built into the Western method of education is that scientific knowledge is superior to all other kinds of knowledge. So when we study statistics, when we study mean and median mode, we are learning something very valuable and precious, as opposed to when we study Quran and Hadith, we are learning something which is not so valuable and not so important. So this idea has to be opposed, and in order to oppose it, first you have to expose it, because it's not there explicitly in the text, it's buried in the foundation. So that's why Muslims must approach the subject differently from others. Yes?
Sir, would it not narrow the horizon?
Absolutely. A lot of people say that you should there are lots of things in here which would be very useful for a Western audience because it is not available. But I don't have a Western audience in mind. Yes, I narrow my audience to Muslims because Islamic approach is different and it's only applicable in an Islamic context. So actually you see, every approach has its own built-in assumptions. So when we go and learn, we acquire a secular education, then we absorb all of the assumptions which are implicit. That's also a religion. Secularism is also a religion, and it also has its own assumptions which they teach. And so we cannot follow that because many of those ideas are in conflict with Islamic ideas. And so we have to narrow the audience.
Sir?
Yes.
Sir, there is I think there is the missing themes in lots of subjects. Like if we talk about the economics, the many subjects, parts of the economics, macro, and mathematics and statistics. So the theme, Islamic theme, is missing in all those subjects. If we hear only for the introduction statistics for the Muslims, so what about those another subjects and chemistry and natural sciences and another? So there is missing themes. So how the other students can get the Islamic approach in those subjects? Why only the introduction to statistics for Muslims?
Well, that's a very good question, and that's what we are trying to do. We are trying to launch a revolution. I am showing how it can be done in statistics, and I hope that other people who are teaching chemistry will learn how to do this in chemistry and so on.
Sir, another question is this, sir, can you give some examples from statistics from the Islamic point of view?
Yes, this whole course is dealing with that. So, everything must be related to purpose. I am here, I am teaching you, you are here, you are studying. Why? In Islam, everything depends on the intention. Innamal a'mal bin niyat. So it's not that. So first of all, there was these intentions are not discussed in normal Western courses because basically again there was a very strong emphasis on materialism. By materialism, I don't mean what ordinarily people understand by it. That is, seeking wealth. Actually, materialism is a philosophy which says that only material things matter, and there is no invisible. Actually, it's the rejection of the ghaib. And the Quran starts with "Allazina yu'minuna bil ghaib." Those people who believe in the unseen. In the West, there is an explicit tradition which says that if something is unseen, it doesn't exist. So, because of that, there was a time when people in the West thought that when we think, thought is an abstract thing. There's also a fluid secretion of the brain. So everything has to have some material manifestation. If it is not material, it doesn't exist. So, intentions, these are immaterial, these are invisible, so they don't matter. Actually, intentions are very important and they matter a lot. So first we have to be clear according to Islamic ideas, and that's the most important thing. Why am I sitting here? What is my purpose? Now, in the material world, the idea is that I'm teaching because I will earn a salary. So, I don't know whether or not I'm going to get paid for this course. I haven't investigated the rules. So, similarly, your typical student is studying because then he will get a grade for this course, and then he will get a degree, and then he will get a job. And so that's the intention. So, these are not actually first of all, there is a difference between Islam and Christianity on this account. Islam is a practical religion, and in Christianity, pursuit of wealth is discouraged. In Islam, it is not encouraged, but the thing is that you are supposed to earn money to the extent of fulfilling your responsibilities, and you have a responsibility to yourself to be able to feed and clothe, and also you have a responsibility to those who are your kin and who are dependent upon you. So earning enough money to feed and clothe and house them and educate them is required. So to that extent, earning money is not only permissible, it's actually demanded by Islam. But it should not be the purpose of life to earn money. And unfortunately, many people in these times have made this the purpose of their life. The purpose of my life is to earn money. And that's not good. So the first thing is to understand that if we do something with the right intention, then it becomes an act of worship. Now from the Islamic point of view, all actions of a Muslim should be acts of worship. So now we have to try to figure out how I can sit here in such a way, with such an intention that this becomes ibadah, because Allah Ta'ala said that مَا خَلَقْنَا الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ, that we have not created man and jinn except for worship. So how can we turn this sitting, my teaching, your learning into an act of worship? So the first thing is to correct the intentions. Now, as I said, even the intention to earn money is not, can be an act of worship, provided that we understand that it's not earning infinite amounts of money for no purpose. We earn money so that we can support ourselves and we are not a burden. It's very interesting. The Islamic reason for my earning money to support myself is not so much because I am required to support myself. It's more because I don't want to be a burden on others. And this is the thing, that in Islam we have social responsibility. If somebody is not earning anything, then I have to provide food to them. So if somebody is poor, somebody is hungry, somebody is sick, then collectively we all have the responsibility. If somebody is uneducated, we have the responsibility to take care of their needs as a society, as a group. So every responsibility is, Islam is very symmetrically balanced. If you have a responsibility, the other side has a duty. If I have the responsibility to help you in the time of need, you have the responsibility to make sure that you are in need only when there's nothing you can do. I mean, if somebody is a widow or an orphan or somehow handicapped, then he is mazur. But if somebody can earn for himself and then he chooses to be a burden on others, this is not permitted, because that's just the duty. It is because of this that we have the responsibility to help others, because they are not supposed to sit and wait for help if they can do anything. So it's only when they can't do anything that we must help them. So this is a very finely balanced system. Now in the West, we talk only about one side. I have this right, I have this right, but no responsibilities. So in Islam, every right is matched by a responsibility. If I have a right to be helped in the time of need, I have the responsibility to help myself and others. So they are perfectly balanced and matched. So as I was saying, the problem is, what are the intentions for seeking knowledge which will make this an act of worship? Well, we have to look at what are the orders of Allah with respect to knowledge. So the Quran started with Iqra, read. So we are supposed to learn, acquire knowledge by the order of Allah. Allah Ta'ala says to, actually the ayat is addressed to Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and says that, say Rabbi zidni ilma, say that, oh Allah Ta'ala, increase me in knowledge. So even the Prophet is being asked to search for increase in knowledge, and we are supposed to emulate the Prophet, so we are also supposed to ask for increase in knowledge. So we ask Allah for more knowledge.
सर रसूल खुदा सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि वसल्लम ने जब यह कहा कि मेरे नाल में इजाफा करें, तो वो तो सर उस दुनिया के लिए था, इस दुनिया के लिए तो नहीं था. और दूसरी जो नॉलेज हम गेट कर रहे वो तो हम सिर्फ पैसों के लिए, मीन्स पैसों के लिए इस मकसद से नहीं, लेकिन हमारा मेन आइडिया ये होता है कि हम नॉलेज हासिल करके किसी अच्छी जगह पे जा हासिल करें.
हाँ, तो यही बात है कि ये एक सेक्युलर थिंकिंग है जो वजूद में आई है, जिसको मिटाने की हम यहाँ कोशिश कर रहे हैं. कि फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल देयर इज नो, यानी इन इस्लाम we have an integrated worldview. It's not that some things are done for the other world and some things are done for this world. Everything is done for one purpose. And when we seek knowledge, so knowledge is for, if we seek knowledge with the idea that with this knowledge I will serve the ummah, I will serve mankind, and this is desirable because Allah Ta'ala wants us to help others, then it becomes worship. So this is exactly what I am trying to teach you, that even if we are studying so that we can get job, this can also be worship if we understand that we will earn money in order to fulfill our social responsibilities and in order to fulfill the orders of Allah, to go for Hajj and do all of these things. For all of these things we need money. So even as long as you are earning money for the purpose of spending it for the sake of Allah, and this includes earning food and housing for yourself, this is also for the sake of Allah, then it becomes worship. Also, that's not the only intention. There are other, there is knowledge for self-purification, tazkiyah. So exactly, if we understand that I am seeking knowledge just for worldly benefits, and now I realize that this is a mistake, and now I change my intention and I say, okay, if I earn money, I will use it in the way that Allah Ta'ala wants me to use it, then it's tazkiyah. Now I have changed a bad intention to a good intention, self-purification. This is part of deen. For spiritual advance, yes.
Sir, the previous slide said, fourth point, I guess, one of the previous slides, sir, previous than that. Sir, man has the potential to be a Sunnah Taqweem. Sir, I don't understand.
Well, there is a ayat in the Quran, لَقَدْ خَلَقْنَا الْإِنسَانَ فِي أَحْسَنِ تَقْوِيمٍ ثُمَّ رَدَدْنَاهُ أَسْفَلَ سَافِلِينَ. It means that man was created in the best of conformations, means that, and also reduced to the lowest of the low. So, how I understand this ayat, and how it has been interpreted by some scholars, but not all, is that inside man there is the potential to rise higher than the angels, because it's the best of creation. Also is the potential to be worse than the beasts. So our purpose is to try to achieve this potential which is buried within every human being. It's like this, that there is a seed, and the seed has the potential to become a tree. But it doesn't automatically become a tree. It has to have the right conditions, and it has to be planted, and it has to have the right weather and right soil, and then it will become a tree. So exactly like this, we are not automatically ahsan taqweem, we are not automatically superior to the angels, but inside every human being there is the potential to rise higher than the angels. And so our goal in life is to achieve that potential, to try to find the right circumstances and the right soil and the right weather, so that this potential can be achieved and realized. and also to avoid the other potential to be worse than the beasts. So there is a lot of encouragement to seek knowledge, which is found in the Quran. Allah Ta'ala teaches us to pray for increase in knowledge. There is a hadith that you should seek knowledge from the cradle to the grave. And there is a hadith that alim is superior to abid, like the moon is superior to the stars. So the act of seeking knowledge is more important than the act of worship. So somebody stays and makes tahajjud and ibadat all the time, and the other person is seeking knowledge, then the seeker of knowledge is superior. And the ink of the scholar is like the blood of a martyr. So all of these things are showing us that knowledge is important. Basically, I think I discussed this earlier also, that Muslims, the Arabs at that time, were very backwards, ignorant. It's called Jahiliyyah, the period of ignorance. Islam brought them knowledge. With this knowledge they became leaders of the world. So obviously it is a very powerful knowledge. And today there is a question, is this knowledge of equal value today? Now even in the West, people understand that Islam did lead Muslims to world leadership. So now what they say is that knowledge was very valuable at that time, but it is not adapted to current conditions. So today Islam's teachings are useless, irrelevant. And today if we want to progress, then we have to study statistics and chemistry and biology and physics. What I would like to say is that this is false. That today also Islam has the solutions to all of our problems, but today Muslims are not paying attention. It is said that Islam came as a stranger and it will become a stranger, and so it is true today that Islam is a stranger to Muslims, but the Muslims are involved in what is called Jahl Murakkab. Jahl Murakkab is compound ignorance. It means that the Muslims are ignorance is to not know something, and compound ignorance is to not know something but to believe that you know it. So Muslims think that they know Islam, and therefore they say, I already know Islam, it doesn't offer me any solution to any problem that I can see, so it's useless, let's go and find some important things. And obviously Western knowledge is very important because it helps me to find jobs, and it gives me prestige and status and all of those things. So this is actually wrong. Islamic knowledge is very powerful, and it has the same power today. Muslims are living very much in Jahiliyyah today, very much in a state of ignorance. All of the sins that were prevalent in the time of Jahiliyyah are prevalent all over the world today, including killing your own children. There is a book called Mothers Who Kill Their Children, which studies thousands of such cases which have occurred in the USA. So today it is not that to achieve world leadership we need to learn chemistry and physics. Actually today the same thing which led Arabs from the bottom to the top is applicable, and Islam has just as revolutionary teaching today as it did 1400 years ago, but Muslims are not aware of this. So the purpose of learning, we have already discussed that there is a large number of contrasts. In Islam we seek spiritual growth, we seek to serve others. So I acquire knowledge not because it will be beneficial to me and I will be able to exploit the ignorance of other people, but rather I want to serve others and help them. One important difference, the Western idea is that knowledge should be the scientist or the one who has knowledge should be neutral and detached. He should not be emotionally involved with the subject, because that will create bias and that will prevent learning, which must be neutral. In Islam is the opposite. Islam says that if you look at something that is going wrong, then you must try to fix it. You can't be neutral. So if there is a person, he is dying of hunger, so the scientist will make notes that, oh yes, his breath is coming slowly, yes, his heartbeat is slowing down, yes, his eyes are turning white. While the Muslim will go and try to help him, and he will not be able to study the conditions. At the end, you will say, okay, what were the physiological conditions? The Muslim say, I don't know, I was trying to give him water and pump his heart. And the scientist will say, oh yes, I have perfect notes, exactly. So there is a difference between. So Muslims have to be, by the order of Allah, engaged. We cannot watch injustice and just describe it neutrally. At the same time, what is very interesting is that Allah Ta'ala says that do not let your emotions lead you to injustice. You have to be just even to your enemies. And you have to give witness even if it is against your own self-interest. So this is very different from Western idea. According to the West, people are naturally selfish and they cannot give evidence against themselves. So in the USA, according to the law, there is something called the Fifth Amendment, which says that if you are asked to give testimony in court and this testimony will harm your self-interest, then you don't have to give it, because it's not humanly possible to go against your self-interest. So Islam says no, you can and you should and you must. So these are very high standards, and today Muslims are not following these standards. So basically the question arises that is this possible? So the West saying is not possible. Now we cannot say that it is possible to bear witness against yourself just from theory. Unless we demonstrate this with our lives, we cannot prove this. So this is the challenge that the Muslims face, that to live Islam, not to just talk about it. So I've started lecturing, which was not my intention. Let me go back to asking questions, and let me look at those questions in which there was the maximum amount of confusion. So one of them was the first one, which was I think since statistics is a purely technical subject, nearly everybody got that one right, because there's just a few mistakes. But the next one, religion has no role to play in teaching purely technical and objective subject like statistics, and it is very important in teaching subjective and spiritual. So about 1/3 of the people got this wrong. So we've been discussing this mostly for this lecture. Now, there is something to this in the sense that we do agree, and there is no dispute, that chemistry is not covered in the Quran and the Hadith. There is no formula for H2O, and there is no description in Quran and Hadith about how to solve the quadratic equation and how to find the mean, the median, and the mode of a list of numbers. So obviously there is some knowledge. I mean, we're not saying that religion encompasses all of knowledge. First of all, one issue is that there are some temporary types of knowledge which are useful. But what we are saying is that how to use knowledge, how to teach knowledge, to understand whether it's useful or not, we have to have Islam. For example, just like Islamic teachings influence. So for example, if you're learning how to make poison, should we teach it? Actually, suppose that I'm teaching chemistry and I have a formula which creates a poison that doesn't have any taste or flavor, and it kills people and it doesn't leave any trace. Should I teach this in the class or not? Now, according to the West, there is no harm. Knowledge is knowledge. But according to Islamic teachings, I will analyze who is my audience, why am I teaching this? Will they use this in a bad way? Will the girls go and poison their mother-in-laws? So, all of these things I have to take into account. I can't just teach it and say, well, how other people use it is up to them. So, Islam, and of course, what is moral and what is immoral, this is taught by Islam. So we can't, religion does involve us in purely technical and purely objective subjects. We have to have some, religion tells us how to teach it, what to teach, and also it says that we are responsible for what we teach. If I teach something harmful and people use it for harmful purposes, you remember that there is a story in the Quran about two angels, Harut and Marut. Who knows the story? Yes? No? Somebody knows the story. No? Two angels were sent down by Allah Ta'ala as a test, and they taught people knowledge, and they said that, look, this knowledge is harmful, don't take it from us. But people would come. And what was the knowledge? Basically, it was the knowledge of how to put fitna, how to separate couples and how to cause enmity between people. So some people, it's very useful for some people to create enmity and to separate couples. And so people learned it, although locally it was useful to them and it helped them achieve some worldly goal, it was very harmful to them for their akhirah, but they did not know this. So, approach to knowledge has to be is influenced by Islam. So in this question also there were a lot of wrong answers. All human knowledge is acquired by the use of our five senses and the faculty of reason. This is exactly the standpoint, the fundamental Western idea of objective knowledge, that you see the five senses are, according to them, indisputable. Everybody can agree. What I see, what I can touch, these are common, objective. There's not going to be any disagreement. And then of course we can use our logic to put this together. And so they say that this is knowledge. Everything else, I may have a feeling, I may have an intuition. This is not knowledge. So how come 16 people said that this is correct? There are other types of knowledge. What other types of knowledge are there? What type of knowledge is something which is not acquired by our five senses and logic? Yes?
Our faith and
Yes, Allah, the ilham is revealed knowledge. Knowledge that was revealed, that Allah Ta'ala says they are angels, and we believe it because Allah Ta'ala said it. We have no evidence for it. It's not empirical knowledge. Now, actually, I think that there is something to be said here that might need clarification, because when we say faculty of reason, we use it in Islam in a different way from the way that it is used in the West. So, for example, I can say that, well, if it is written in the Quran, then it's reasonable for me to believe it. So, that's quite correct. And yet, when West says faculty of reason, they mean certain logical deductions like geometry and mathematics. And it's not the logic that we are using in believing in ilham and wahi is not the same type of logic. So there is some room for confusion here. So restriction, you see, there is certain type of knowledge which is not just based on the five senses and the faculty of reason. One of the most important types of knowledge is experience. I learned how to drive. I have experience. Now, this is actually acquired by my own personal experience, but it is not objective in the sense that I can't share it with you. I can't give you my experience. You have to experience it yourself. And so it's not objective knowledge of the type that is acceptable as scientific knowledge, but it is one of the most important types of knowledge all of us have. And so ruling this out of the picture has led to a very distorted understanding of what knowledge is, and has caused much damage. Okay, so this one also a lot of people got wrong. Some of the intentions are desirable and some are not. To acquire expertise is a desirable intention, because actually Islamic teachings say that when a Mu'min does a job, he does it well. So having competence in the job that you're doing, whatever it is you're doing, whether you are fixing automobiles or whether you are running the show. There's a Junaid Jamshed once went to Raiwind. At that time he was still a singer. So he was introduced to the elders, and somebody said, he's a very he's a top singer. So Junaid Jamshed said that I thought to myself that now we'll get a reprimand and a rebuke. So actually the elders were very taken aback that he's a very good singer. And he said, well, it is the characteristic of a moment that whatever he does very well. So he was very happy that they had not rejected his talent. So even though it was in the wrong direction. So to acquire expertise is desirable. To appreciate the wonders of Allah as displayed in the world, this is definitely a good intention for the seeking of knowledge. There is a story about Watson, who was one of the discoverers of the double helix, the pattern of molecules that are used in the reproductive process. So he said, and you can find this quote on the internet in many places, he said that, when I first saw this mechanism, what is this mechanism? Basically if you can think of it, probably you've all seen it, you have a ladder shape, two strands on the sides and then links between them. So it's like a ladder, but it's coiled. So that's the DNA molecule. It's coiled and then it starts coming apart. See, the basic problem is, how does something replicate? One becomes two. So this starts coming apart. So there's a ladder which is half open. So there's one side and the other side, and both of them have little steps sticking out. It breaks up, and now molecules come and join, and so the step is completed and the other side is completed, and it keeps uncoiling and new molecules attach. And he said that when I saw this, it was so fantastic. It was such an amazing construction that I said that this cannot happen by itself. Someone must have created this. But unfortunately, he didn't get the tawfiq for Iman. So later on he wrote a book. It's a very interesting book. I have cited it somewhere. It says that much we can be sure, that life did not originate by an accident on this planet. So now how can it be? Well, he had this theory of panspermia. He said that some advanced civilization came into existence. He didn't explain how. And then they sent rocket ships with the basic building blocks of life all over the universe, seeding the universe. So one of these rocket ships landed here, and it had some basic organic molecules which can be used to start life. So he was so strong that every explanation is possible except the explanation that there is God. So he had to come up with this fantastically ridiculous theory in order to explain how life originated, because one thing is clear, that it didn't originate by accident.
Sir?
Yes.
So what does Islam say about theory of evolution?
Well, you see, evolution is not one theory. There is a large group of theories.
Yes. So
one is called microevolution. So within a species, changes can happen. It can become taller. And then there is the macroevolution, which is that one species can change into another species. Now there is a lot of empirical evidence for microevolution, that is, changes happen in species. They grow taller, they grow shorter. So far there is no evidence for macroevolution, that is, one species somehow changing into another species. The idea that one species could change into another species was studied. Yeah, that was what Darwin thought. But all of the things that he said would be found, like the missing links, were not found. So basically, the whole idea is in question. But the point is exactly like Watson's problem. We know that some species were not in existence earlier and came into existence later. So now the question is how? Either God put them there. If not, then evolution must have happened. Now how it happened, we don't know, but we have faith. We have faith that there is no God. So then that convinces us that we must have evolution. Now exactly how evolution works, nobody knows. You need the most elementary life form is a cell. A cell is so enormously complicated that nobody says that this came into being all by itself. It's not possible. It's like more complicated than New York City, all of its factories and all of its industries. Volumes of books are written on different mechanisms which operate within the cell. And it's the simplest life form. There's nothing simpler than that. So now either we have faith in God, that God created the cell, or we have faith, and this is what in an unseen process. So what the scientists do is they say that, well, there were these simple sulfur-based or water-based life forms, of which there is no evidence, and then they gradually became more complicated, and eventually they formed a cell, and then the cell was so efficient that it destroyed all of these primitive life forms, leaving no evidence for its creation. So this is a belief in unseen of the highest order. But on these primitive life forms, which must have existed in order to get to a cell, because otherwise we can't explain how the cell came into existence. So we have Islamic methodology for teaching is different from Western methodology. Oops, I went back to the slides. Let me go back to the questions and try to clarify them. So to use knowledge to serve mankind, obviously that's there's a subtlety here that it's not just service that is required. I mean, we are asked to serve people, but if it is like the generous man, he spends his money on others. But it must be for the love of Allah. It cannot be for the love of popularity or fame. And so this is another difficulty, that if we seek popularity, if we seek fame, then these are not acceptable. So Allah Ta'ala mentioned in the Quran that they feed others out of the love of Allah. So it's not enough to just feed others. We have to have the right intention, feeding others, because Allah Ta'ala wants us to do this. So this is a subtlety, and so if it is done for that reason, then it's good, otherwise it's not. So when it says that the basic responsibility of the teacher is to make sure that the students understand the subject, well, actually the rules for teachers are very strict. The Islamic etiquette, adab for teaching. So first thing I have to understand as a teacher is that my students are all very precious, very important. I cannot waste their time. If I come to class late, this means that I do not care enough about the time of my students. Now, I have to understand that all of my students are potentially capable of changing the world, and it is my job as a teacher to try to develop this potential, to try to understand, try to make you understand how important you are. Because in the materialist worldview, the materialist worldview teaches us that we are insignificant. And if you think about Newton's laws, then the effect of an object is dependent on its mass and velocity. Now my mass is about 80 kilograms and I don't move very fast. And this world is billions of tons. So I can't have much of an impact. No matter what I do, no matter how I spend my life, I'm just a little insect in a big... So there's nothing I can do. So I should concern only with myself, with my own life. That's the best. This is materialist thinking, because now the Quran says that if you save one life, it is as if you have saved the whole world. Now the Quran does not exaggerate. Allah Ta'ala in another place, He mentioned that the Surah Shu'ara, says that the shairs, the poets are bad because they exaggerate a lot. So obviously Allah Ta'ala does not exaggerate. What this means is that every human being has the potential to change the lives of large numbers of people. We can have an impact on the whole world. It will not be by the physical means, because the Newton's laws are perfectly valid. It's not our mass and velocity which is the indicator, but it is ideas, it is vision, it is spirituality. These things make a difference. And if you see the lives of people, you see, this is exactly the opposite of the lesson that is being taught in the Western world. That I studied this, that basically you see the destiny of a nation depends on the geography, the material resources that it has. If it is lots of natural resources, then they will become rich and they will. But actually, if you look at what happened, if you look 2 centuries ago, Brazil and Russia and North America and Australia and certain other big land masses, roughly speaking, they have India, they have about the same in terms of natural resources, in terms of agricultural land, in terms of many. But if you look at the development trajectory, it's extremely different. So it means that the natural resources are not the controlling factors. It's not the material means at your disposal that determines what will happen to you. And if you look at the greatest example is our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He came to a place which was barren, a desert. There were no natural resources. The people were backward and ignorant, the most backward people on the planet. And he did not provide them with any material resources. He did not bring any guns or technology or anything material. What he brought them was spiritual knowledge. And with this knowledge, they changed the world. The course of history was changed. So knowledge is very powerful. Our vision, our ideas, our goals are very important, and we can change the world. So we have to understand that we have the potential. Unless we realize that we can do things, we will not try for them. لَيْسَ لِلْإِنسَانِ إِلَّا مَا سَعَى. You will try. You will get only what you seek. You will get only what you try for. If you try for something very simple, very easy, very cheap, then that's what you will get. So today, a major problem with the ummah of Muslimin is that we are seeking very small goals. Every person has the goal of building his own personal life, and who cares about others? So, according to this, if we have petty goals, then we will achieve petty results. So if we have a big vision, then the impact of our actions will be in accordance with our vision. The first thing is to raise your sights. Be somebody. You have only one chance to live. Make it glorious. Make it fantastic. Don't make it ordinary. So this is the thing, that the job of the teacher is to inspire students, to make sure that they do their best to excel and to have a big vision, not to be cheap, not to be for sale. Actually, today the truth is that students are taught to be commodities on the market. If a student comes and he is offered a job by a multinational for $100,000, he says, "Okay, I'm ready. Whatever you ask me to do, I'm for sale." Literally, this is true. They think that their lives can be purchased for money. This is a mistake. You are more precious. All the gold in the world cannot buy you. There has been nobody like you before on this planet, and there will be nobody like you again. Your experiences are unique, and there are unique things that you can do that nobody else can do. So you have to understand that you're not for sale. I met expatriate of Pakistani, American Pakistani. He was here a few years ago. He was here doing some job for some multinational, and he told to me, I didn't ask him, he was, I think, feeling guilty. He said that, I'm doing this in Pakistan, and I know it's harmful for Pakistan, but what can I do? I'm being paid very well, and if I didn't do it, somebody else would. So this is his excuse. He has been purchased for money, and now he does whatever they tell him to do. This is not, if we are not for sale, then it doesn't matter how much money they give us. We will not do anything which is harmful to the interests of the people, and we would prefer to I was saying something like this, and to somebody, he said that, look, you and who else? You are so weak, and the forces of oppression and the forces which are so strong. So we have no option. We have to join them. Actually, this is the cruel choice that was faced by our ancestors in the period of colonialism. A very difficult choice. Either you starve, or you join the colonials in oppressing the rest of the people, and then you can be rich. So either you betray your own nation and your own heritage and everything, and then you can be rich, or you suffer. So this is a very tough choice, and this choice which is always there. So it's a question of taste. I would rather, वही टीपू सुल्तान ने कहा था कि live one day as a lion or for 100 years as a jackal. So which will you prefer? So I would like to say that yes, we can have a short life and we can suffer with the people if we don't want to sell out. Basically, that's so. This is the job of the teacher, to bring out the potential of the students, to make learning possible, facilitate. It's not actually to teach the subject. The subject, you see, learning the subject requires struggle on your own part. I cannot do it for you. I can only encourage you to do it, but you have to do the struggle yourself. There is a ayat in the Quran, وَالَّذِينَ جَاهَدُوا فِينَا لَنَهْدِيَنَّهُمْ سُبُلَنَا, that those who struggle in us, we guide them to our pathways. So this has a very action-oriented approach. Knowledge is given in the process of the struggle. You cannot acquire knowledge passively. I am telling you, you are listening and now you have learned something. No. Unless you struggle, you will not own this knowledge. To own the knowledge, you have to work on it. So, for example, I am telling you many ideas which conflict with things that you have been told. Now you have heard them. You have not understood what I have said. To understand it, one technique is to try to convey this message to others. Say that our professor is saying this. What do you think? Try to discuss, to explain, to say that I didn't agree with this. What do you think? If you discuss and try to explain it to others, then you will, in the process of this, you will understand it much better, what I am telling you, because now you're struggling with this. And so for the teacher, as a teacher, my responsibility is to make sure that everything I teach you is useful knowledge, because teaching useless knowledge will be haram, will be prohibited. But how do I know? Actually, there's a whole stock of Western knowledge, and they don't differentiate. So I have to be very careful. I have to select the good things and I have to avoid the poisons. And I have done this over. It's taken me 10 years to work out what is useful and what is useless, and it has been very helpful in the sense that because I understood this issue about driving versus technology, I found out that a lot of things can be discarded. They are not needed to teach students. So I have picked out very carefully those things which are important, and I have discarded a lot of things which are not important. So the course is very efficiently packed on topics which are of importance. So, similar to rules for teachers, there are also rules for students. So, these are covered in this slide. So we have to seek knowledge with humility. These are quite different from Western models for learning, and I had great difficulty because I learned the Western models for learning first, and they seemed quite efficient to me at that time. So when I found out that Islamic teachings and all this are different, I was surprised, and I couldn't understand. So, for example, in the West, they teach us that you have to be aggressive and assertive and confident and bold and ask questions. Don't accept anything on authority. In Islam, there is a balance. I mean, some things you accept on authority, but other things you have to question. That even when you question, there are certain rules for questioning that you must follow. In some cases, people ask questions just to create controversies. So if you are sincere and if you have a problem, then you should ask it. And in fact, it is important to, if you have a question, that you should expose it. And this is very different from just taking everything on faith. I am just a human being. As far as wahi is concerned, you have to take it on faith. But what I am saying, it can easily be wrong. And so if you find something that is wrong, you are most welcome to try to correct me, as many students, and I am continuously learning from my students. When I went to the quiz and I found that some questions had been answered correctly, I changed the question because I realized that it was ambiguous. Even now, some of the questions are ambiguous, and if you interpret them in a different way, you can come to a different answer. I have certain thing in mind when I ask the question, but the student understands something else from it. So that's the end of the lecture, and more or less the end of time. But there are a few minutes left, and if there's anything else that somebody wants to ask or question, I'll be happy to learn. Yes.
That is clear that Islamic ideas and rules are more superior than other. But if we see the conventional economics in the past, that 2 or 3 decades before, that the main ideas was that to produce more and more, to generate more and more profit. But nowadays the idea is changed, like some extent. Mean that the conventional economics now is struggling to enter the boundary of Islamic ideas and rules. Like we take the example of environmental economics, that before we were thinking to create more profit and more production. Now we struggle that yes, the production is good for the economy, but we should take care of other as well. Like the concept of externality. If we create a negative externality, that person or that sector should pay a tax for it. If it pay or it produce a positive externality, then the government or the other sector pays some compensation to it. Then we can say that the conventional economics is now struggling to move towards the Islamic ideas.
Right. Well, first of all, obviously they don't think of themselves as moving towards Islamic ideas. We might conceive of it in this way, but certainly it's not their idea. Second of all, they had a wrong idea that we should go after growth. They saw a lot of damage coming from that. Now they are trying to control the damage. But what if the idea itself is basically wrong? And that's what I would like to say that. Because they were pursuing the wrong goals, they came to a lot of harm. They realized this harm, and they are trying to fix it, but they are very far from understanding the true extent and nature of the harm. And even now, the climate control and the environmental change, what is being done today is not sufficient to solve the problem. There is a huge amount of disaster and catastrophe that has been created, large number of species destroyed, that can never be undone. The harm that has been done is forever. And why? Well, the basic concept is that the concept of private property in the West is that something which belongs to me, I can do with it whatever I want. I don't have to worry about others. Whereas in Islam, the concept of property is a trust. It has been given to me for safekeeping, and I have to make sure that I pass it on to the future generations. Because this concept was lost, huge amount of environmental damage was done. It's still lost. Now they are just trying to do damage control to the extent that while we live, we don't suffer from it, and who cares about what happens to posterity. And because of this, sufficient effort is not being done because of lack of morals, lack of understanding, lack of the idea of justice to the future generations. So, although they are coming to an understanding which is closer to Islamic ideas, they are very far from it, and they will never reach.
Sir?
Yes.
Sir, we were discussing that we seek knowledge for the sake of good job. But as a Muslim, we believe in faith. We believe in faith. That is your risk that is written in your faith, and you will get what is written in your faith.
Yes.
Then it's insignificant that we are saying that if we get good degrees, then we get a good job. So how do you understand it?
Well, faith is a very complicated subject. So, I could not. There are many paradoxes associated with it. That
controversial.
yes. So whatever is written for us, we also have to struggle for that at the same time. That is also written for us.
Right and wrong paths are there, and you have to choose what is the right
Yes.
and what is the wrong.
Faith has to do with the ilm of God, not with the jabr. Allah Ta'ala does not force us to follow certain paths. He just knows which paths we are going to choose. That's what faith is. So that doesn't mean, it's like this, that if you see a movie, then you can tell what this guy is going to do, what he is going to say. But that doesn't mean that the person who was acting in the drama, he wasn't free. Although he could make mistakes in saying the lines. He could choose to say something different from what was written in the script, and many other things. So he had the choice. He made certain choices. But anyway, now it's sealed. Now see, Allah Ta'ala has seen everything from the beginning to the end, so He knows exactly what we are going to do. But it doesn't interfere with our freedom to make the choice. When we are facing with a situation, we are free to choose. The fact that it's written what you will do doesn't mean that we are going to be compelled to do this regardless of what we want to do. No. Actually, we made a choice, and Allah Ta'ala knows the choice that we made. But we still had freedom to choose. So that's... Alright, that's all for today. Subhanallah bihamdihi, subhanallah.